Frame her up, Naseem. Kaelon, you gonna run that, cameraman?
How's that? Is that better? How's that?
Good.
All right.
So the first question I have for you is, what made you want to become a congressman?
Well, like I was talking about outside, I just felt like it was time to get off the sidelines. I was really upset about the direction Congress was going. I thought there was too much bickering and people not putting the interests of the country above their own interests. And I've been frustrated about it for a while. And I felt like, I've had a career as a prosecutor for a long time. Now is my turn to give back and contribute to the community in a different way, and I decided to do it. That, and I wasn't satisfied with our current leadership in Congress, and I felt like if we didn't knock him off this time, he would be around for a long time, and I didn't think he was that great for Central New York. So those two reasons, really.
So you wanted to make a change?
I wanted to make a change, no doubt about it. Yeah.
So how does one become a congressman?
Well, you work your tail off, for sure. I'll just explain briefly how it happened for me. The first thing you do is, if you're interested in becoming a congressman, you have to get a nomination of a party, okay? So I'm a Republican, I belong to the Republican Party, so I had to get their nomination. So for that, I had to go to pretty much every town in the four-county district. There's like 60-some-odd towns. And some towns would have combined with others. But you would have to go in, they had like a basically meet the candidates night. And there was about 10 of us going for the nomination. And so everywhere I go, I'd give my 10, 15-minute speech, and then I'd go to the next town. And we did that for 6 weeks. In the meantime, I contacted all the town committee members. There's 800 of them. I spoke to every single one of them and sold myself. Mm-hmm. Then on March 1st, I had a nomination, and I was nominated to be the party's choice to run for Congress. So from March 1st until like June, you had to get petitions. And the petitions were to, you had to go around and get enough signatures to get on the ballot. And so I ended up being on ballot for the Republican, Independents, and Conservative lines. Mm-hmm. And during the same period of time, I had to build my staff, my campaign staff, and it slowly grew. And I also had to raise money. And then throughout, after I got the petitions done, basically was full bore into the campaign and just kept running and going places and meeting people, making speeches, raising money, figuring out which commercials to run and how to respond to attacks and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. And then, of course, the election night was fun. It was great.
And we know, like, being a congressman is, like, hard and you have to do a lot of things. But what do you think personally was the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of my job is being away from my family, for sure. Yeah, because, like, 3 weeks out of the month, at least, you're in Washington. And when you're in Washington those weeks, it's 2 to 3 nights, which is like 3 to 4 days. So that's hard being away from your family that long, That's the hardest part, because I have teenage boys. The job is kind of what I expected. I knew it was going to be difficult. But being a federal prosecutor was much more stressful. The hardest thing about this job is being away from home. The second hardest thing is you work very long hours. And so, it's very common to have a 16, 18-hour day. So, it's very busy.
What do you like most about your job?
Serving my people, serving my constituents. Yeah, I love it. When you get to say you represent the United States of America in anything, that's a good thing, and that's what I love. I love representing people, and I love helping them. And I hear, or getting a bill passed that's going to help people, or doing something that's positive to help people. And we do a lot of stuff with constituents coming in that need help. Like one woman came in, and her husband had died. And they stopped sending her Social Security check to her because they said, no, you died, not your husband. And she's like, well, I'm alive, and I'm not going to cash my husband's checks because he's dead. You stop sending his and send mine. And she had to actually try to convince Social Security that they messed up. So she came to us, we gave her help and got it straightened out. And she was very gratified. Those little things like that are really cool, too. Very neat.
So with that being said, how do you think your actions as a congressman have helped the people of New York?
Well, I think that I've kind of restored a sense of pride in the congressman, and I think that people think that I'm there for the right reasons, and I think they enjoy what I'm doing. I'm also getting some bills passed, and I'm getting a lot of grants back to the area. So there's, for example, Lemoyne College I was able to help them secure a $1.5 million grant to help their school get better, things like that. And when you are out there as much as I am too, people feel like they're getting good representation. And I'm out there all the time meeting with constituents. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody or do anything. And I think they like that. They feel like they're getting a pretty decent bang for their buck with this congressman. I hope at least.
Sorry, but do you think that's the attitude that you like really have to have when you're talking to people? Like, you know, kind of
You should.
go back and
You should. You know, not everybody does, and there's a lot of guys in Congress that are, and a lot of men and women that are self-interested, and they put their own self-interest above the country's. Now, the way I've approached this job is, if I get elected again and again, great. If I don't, that's okay too, because I've served and I've done my time. This shouldn't be a career. It should be you go in and serve as long as the people see fit, but you should never make decisions just to preserve your job. Now, I know a lot of congressmen that do that, and I think that's one of the problems with Congress. And you see congressmen that are there 40 years, you're like, how could you effectively do this job for 40 years? You know what I mean? So I don't think it's a job that you should have for that long. So when you don't have that pressure of, I've got to get reelected, it's a lot easier.
We're very appreciative for your visit today, but what made you come to ITC?
I think what you're doing here is innovative, right? And I think it's great that all of you kids chose to be here. You weren't told to come here. Like, you know, like you have to go to Nottingham or Corcoran or Henniger or wherever. You chose to come here. And that's what I like about this. It's innovative teaching. And I think for the future, especially in a city school district, you have to think outside the box to teach kids how to learn and teach them how to learn in a different way. And you guys are learning in a different way here than you would at Henniger or Corcoran, right? And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And you guys are self-motivated, and I wanted to bring some attention to you guys, because if you're motivated enough to want to come here, at least I can do is come here and be your cheerleader, right?
And do you feel that visiting other schools and other organizations is helpful when it comes to changing our world for the better?
Oh, sure. Sure. Like, here's what I've learned, for example, about the school systems. First of all, in this country, they have a nationally dictated program, right, for schools that basically everyone has to abide by. But every school system is not the same. I mean, do you for a second think that the Syracuse City School District is the same as Fayetteville Manlius?
Not at all.
Right? It's a lot different, right? They have a lot of different issues here in the city, right? And so you have to approach teaching kids in the city a lot different than you do them at FM, right? In my opinion. And so that's why I like this place. You guys are doing it differently here, and you're motivating kids in a different way, and that's really cool. Really good.
Seeing our issues here, how do you feel about the violence, other crimes, shooting that occur in our hometown of Syracuse?
Well, I dealt with it for 20 years as a federal prosecutor. I was a gang prosecutor here for 20 years. So I was on the front lines of it all that time. And it was dangerous, and it was scary to see what was going on. But one thing I learned from that, I think it gave me a good perspective for how to deal with issues in the city and how to it's funny because I'm a white guy from the suburbs and a Republican. So everybody's like, what the heck is he doing dealing with city issues? But I lived them for all these years, and you know, I never got excited seeing kids get sentenced to jail, but at the same time, they're very violent. They had to, but I always looked into their backgrounds, and their backgrounds were something that I learned from, and they gave me a very good perspective on the city. And I think the poverty rate and the amount of crime go hand in glove, and the graduation rate goes very high along with violence too. 50% of the kids graduate high school in Syracuse. Right? That's terrible. And your crime rate's much higher than it is in the suburbs where the graduation rate's higher. It's a direct correlation. So if we can somehow figure out why it's so low and then really start looking at it from that standpoint, maybe we can make a difference, and that's what I want to do. And I think that education and poverty go fit hand in glove with crime too. So you got to look at them all and try and figure out how to look at things differently.
So with poverty just being mentioned, just that one, is there any change or anything that's going to happen? Or?
Well, yeah, I think that there is. I mean, I think that we have to, number one, raise awareness, and we've been doing a lot of that, raising awareness as to the plight of the inner cities. And so poverty, okay, Syracuse is the 16th most impoverished city in the country. That's terrible. And they have 50% graduation rate. Rochester is the 3rd most impoverished city in the country. 3rd. They have 42% kids graduate in high school. That's horrible, right? So if you don't graduate high school, you're really behind it. So yes, and I think there's things you can change. Number one is identify the problem, acknowledge that it's a huge problem. And number two, start thinking outside the box on how to fix it. Okay, can you fix poverty per se? No. But can you fix what happens when you have poverty? Perhaps. Like low literacy rates in the city, Syracuse. By 3rd grade, 91% of the kids are reading below reading grade level. What if we get back and worked on things and got these kids reading at a good level earlier, right? Instead of trying to fix a problem by third grade. So all those types of things, thinking differently, I think would really help in the city.
Okay, seeing that it's a 50% graduation rate and it's a struggle getting to college, how do you feel about the college tuition? Do you think college is too much money?
It's ridiculous. And for 30 years, colleges have their costs have been going up higher than the rate of inflation, much higher. And I think that's immoral to some extent. But you know what? A lot of colleges are getting their just due now because they're getting so expensive, kids aren't going to them anymore. And they're going to like the SUNY schools. When I was growing up, the SUNY schools were nowhere near as well regarded as they are now. But now, since they're 1/3 the cost, the SUNY schools are great. They're very, very good. And so more quality students are going to those schools. And that's a great thing because maybe they'll teach those other schools. They better start getting less expensive. And one thing we can work on is at least the interest rates for student loans are way too high. Way too high.
And Utica is just a start.
What's that?
Utica is just a start. Because I seen on the news that it was going down for 40%.
Yeah, that's a good example. Perfect. Utica College. They just said on their own they're going to drop their tuition by 40% because kids can't afford it. God bless them. We need to have more of that. You know, Harvard would never. They have so much money in their endowment, the money that people contribute. They would never have to charge tuition again to anyone ever, and they would never touch the principal of that. The interest from that endowment will be enough to pay everyone's tuition. So if that's true, why are they charging anyone tuition? You know what I mean? It's not right.
Or
Not right.
decreasing their price.
Right, exactly.
And how do you feel about the minorities that are treated in our country, and how are they seen in our society?
Well, we have a long way to go, but it's a hell of a lot better than when I was a kid. And from a legal standpoint, from a perception standpoint, I mean, look at the guy in the White House, right? Who in my lifetime thinking that there was going to be an African-American president was, I was hopeful. And I don't agree with much that he says, but I'm proud of one thing, that I was alive when we elected an African-American in the White House. And I hope that's used as a springboard for more discussions on race. But bottom line is, I think we're going in the right direction for the most part. I think the last year or two we've had some downturns because of media and some things that happen in media, sensationalizing crimes and what have you. And that's kind of fed a lot of this unrest, but it's good dialogue we're having. And I think moving forward, you're in far better standing than we were my generation, and I think your generation is going to be better than, and it's going to be better than next year. I think we're definitely going in the right direction. I mean, when my father was a kid, segregation was still the law in most of this country. Think about that, right? I mean, could you even imagine going to a water fountain where they had one for white people and one for others? Think about that. That was in my parents' generation. Okay, look how much has changed. When I was a baby, I was 2 years old in 1964, the Civil Rights Act. That was a watershed moment. Then the Voting Rights Act after that. That's another watershed moment. So you're having these moments that, and I think the equality has taken root, and it's just not inequality. I should say discrimination is not tolerated. Okay, you have legal recourse, right? And you have a president of the White House who's an African American. It's great. You had Condoleezza Rice, who was a Secretary of State, who was brilliant, an African American woman, one of the most important jobs in the country. So things are getting better. They need to get better. But it's funny because Ben Carson is running now as a Republican candidate, right, for president. He's an African American. I don't think people even talk about his color of his skin. They just talk about the content of his character, and that's exactly what Martin Luther King wanted us to do. So that's a good thing.
As we come to our end of our interview, what are your future plans for our state and our country?
Well, to keep working hard to get more jobs back to Central New York, because with more jobs, I think that's going to help with the poverty issue, raising the poverty issue in Syracuse and addressing more things there. I'm hopeful that we as a country can have a period of peace, and internationally, I'm worried about several things, but I'm going to do the best I can to have my job to help make sure there's peace, and that we're the economic giant that we always have been, and that we continue to be the greatest country on earth. I'll tell you one statistic that you guys should understand. As tough as you may think you have it sometimes, the United States of America has 2% of the world's population. 2%, that's it, right? We have 25% of the world's economy. So we are the greatest country on earth, even with all our problems. So you should be very lucky every day when you wake up that you're here, as opposed to some of the other countries I've been to that are much, much worse.